Recording's in progress. Now we can offer some prayers to Srila Prabhupada. Nama Om Vishnu Bhattaya Krishna Vistaya Bhutale Shrimati Bhakti Vedanta Swami Namani Namaste Sarasati Devi Gaula Vahani Pachaline Nirvasisha Sunyavari Pashtatara Satarine Jai Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shiva Sari Gaura Bhakta Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram, Hare Hare. Yeah, just a reminder, just saw a message from Katarina in the chats. So I've been forgetting to mention this lately, but you can always ask questions in the chat if you want. Although when there's not so many of us, it's a lot easier to field questions. So, okay, that's but if sometimes it's difficult, you can please and put in a chat, because there's something psychological when I see a red mark on the chat, then I have to open it and look at it, I have to get rid of that red mark. So so let me share the screen and share the Bhagavad Gita review. And again, let's have some readers ready to read. Let's see what jewels we can find in today's reading and discussion. Let's see what gifts Krishna is going to reveal to us in this discussion. So Mother Gaia, you can kick us off. You can kick us off, as they say in football. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, is that the one at the top?
Yes, this is it. 9:14. Unless I'm mistaken.
9:14. Na kartartvam na karmani lokasya srajati prabhu na karma phala samyogam svabhavastu pravartate. Translation. The embodied spirit, master of the city of his body, does not create activities, nor does he induce people to act, nor does he create the fruits of action. All this is enacted by the modes of material nature. Purport. The living entity, as will be explained in the 7th chapter, is one of the energies or natures of the Supreme Lord, but is distinct from matter, which is another nature called inferior of the Lord. Somehow, the superior nature, the living entity, has been in contact with material nature since time immemorial. The temporary body or material dwelling place, which he obtains, is the cause of varieties of activities and their resultant reactions. Living in such a conditional atmosphere, one suffers the results of the activities of the body by identifying himself in ignorance with the body. It is ignorance acquired from time immemorial that is the cause of bodily suffering and distress. As soon as the living entity becomes aloof from the activities of the body, he becomes free from the reactions as well. As long as he is in the city of the body, he appears to be the master of it, but actually he is neither its proprietor nor controller of its actions or reactions. He is simply in the midst of the material ocean struggling for existence. The waves of the ocean are tossing him and he has no control over them. His best solution is to get out of the water by transcendental Krishna consciousness. That alone will save him from all turmoil.
Okay, thank you. Hare Krishna. So this is following on, obviously, this is following from text 13. Yeah. So text 13, just read this for our reference. When embodied living being controls his nature and mentally renounces all actions, he resides happily in the city of the 9 gates, neither working nor causing work to be done. So as a result of transcendental knowledge, one doesn't become entangled in the modes of material nature. This is what it means to be a master of the body. Although we're never masters, Krishna is the master, but we should be at least in control of ourselves, and the consequential body that we are in. So then this verse describes the results. So just looking here in the commentary, this describes the results of being in such consciousness. And it's quite a graphic description of our, what you could say, our helpless position. within the midst of this material ocean. That we are, like here it says, we do not create activities. We do not create activities. But how to understand that? Because we definitely, from one perspective, we are creating activities, isn't it? We are ourselves engaging in specific activities. But here it says that we do not create activities. So can anyone explain for us what's, I mean, we do. We create pieces of art. we create cooking. We create conversations. So what does it mean one does not create activities? It's in the purple, but okay. It's good, isn't it? Ask you questions, it forcing you to look and yes.
This is material,
Everything.
material nature.
Nitai Mata, say again.
Material nature creates as per our karma, as per our state, our material nature, basically creating.
Yes, more or less correct. Dhananjay, was you going to say something similar or something else?
Yes, Prabhu, similar. So I can also remember one verse which is Prakriti vacha karmani kriyamanani sarvasha.
Hankara vimutta katamiti
Yeah.
manyate. Yeah. Yeah, what's the translation of that? The bewildered spirit soul thinks himself the doer of activities that are in actuality carried out by the three modes of material nature.
So material nature. Yeah.
Yeah, so that's a perfect answer to that question. And that's confirming Nitai Mata as well, the point she was making. Yeah, we are very much, it is the modes of material nature. So that's why Prabhupada says we're in the midst of this material ocean, which consists of the modes of material nature.
Yeah.
Nor does he induce people to act. Again, this is saying, I'm taking it the other way around here because this someone who's the master of the body, he does not create activities. So that means he's not entangled in the modes of material nature. Yeah. Therefore, he does not induce people to act, nor does he create nor does he create the fruits of action. All this is enacted by the three modes of material nature. So he is aloof. That's more or less what this is one of the gifts of not being the bodily concept of life. Yeah. Anything else from here?
Prabhu, also if we see what the soul actually does, it is just exercising its free will every time.
Yeah.
It's like that's the only thing the soul does.
Yeah, we are a karta to some degree. We are a doer. Just like the Lord is a doer, the three modes of material nature are the doer, and also the karta, the jiva is a doer. It's not as if he does not do anything. But as Dhananjaya said, he just desires to lord it over material nature. Yeah. So therefore that kind of sets a particular chain of reactions in place, which can only be enacted by the three modes of material nature. Otherwise, without the Lord's sanction, even if we desire, we could not do. Yeah. Just like we desire to be healthy, isn't it? But sometimes we cannot be healthy according to the laws of nature. But yeah, thank you. Thank you, Dhananjaya. That's mentioned in this purport. It brings that out. Yeah.
Also, isn't it because of minute independence? Lord will let us do
what we want to do.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, you can.
then I remember, you know, when Prabhupada was saying that his little son wanted to put the finger in the fan, and then his friend said, well, let him do it and he'll realize it. So then sometimes the Lord will let us do these things. Then we'll have to suffer the consequences afterwards.
Yeah. And that's there is some philosophers and philosophies that say we have no free will. There's one atheistic philosopher called Sam Harris. He gave a whole lectures on this speculation that we have no free will. But as Mother Chandravali is saying, yes, we do have free will, and that's gifted by the Lord, and that makes life quite unique. It makes interaction quite unique because everyone can choose what to say, to turn left, to turn right. Yeah. So anyone can say why we have free will if we misuse it. Okay, we misuse it. So why? Let's take it back further. Why has the Lord given us? I think we've established that is that we do have free will.
Because there's no love without free will.
Yeah, you've hit the nail on the head. Yeah.
Yeah, we've done this one before.
Yeah, well, it's good. No, it's good to speak on this again and again, because if you think of well, we can only perhaps relate to material, mundane examples of so-called being in love by having affection for someone, then it's you who voluntarily do something for the beloved. It wouldn't be the same if the beloved forced you to do something. You know, it's not the same. But when it comes out of your own volition, out of an expression of affection or love, so that's what makes the relationship, you could say, relishable. I don't know if you could use it in a material sense. So that's what makes the relationship dynamic. So the jiva has that relationship with Krishna. So yeah, Otherwise,
I just
please
sorry.
continue.
Yeah, I was just thinking, I remember hearing some time ago that devotees saying, if I'm going to fall into Maya, or if I'm going to do something wrong, why doesn't Krishna stop us doing that thing that we shouldn't be doing?
That's the question, huh?
Yeah.
Well,
I have heard that question before, but I can't remember exactly what the answer is now.
Interesting question. Anybody can everyone heard the question? Why? So the question is, why would Krishna give us the ability to do something wrong? That's basically what you're saying?
Yeah, or why doesn't he stop us from doing the wrong thing? Like
why
if we feel like are going to do something.
Yeah. Okay, got the question. 1 second, Nitai Mata. We got something from Katarina in the chats. She said, because he's waiting to see if we will choose him over doing something wrong. Okay. But still the question may be there. Yes, Nitai Mata. Nitai Mata, 1 second, Nitai Mata, and then Chandravali.
I was thinking, all we want to do because we are desiring. It's all about our desire, and it's our desire. So Krishna fulfills all our desires.
Yeah.
And when we desire, we should know what to desire. If you have to decide, even if desire comes, if you still introspect and understand, is this right? And that is why it's important to go to Guru Sadhu Shastra for everything, whatever we do. This is my understanding.
Wow, you should give class, Nitai Mata. I'm going to suggest it in the temple. Please ask Nitai Mata to give class. Yes, very good point. Yeah, and Mother Chandravali also, she mentioned it. She mentioned also it could be one aspect of the answer is that the Lord has, again, he's given us this free will. So sometimes you have to be cruel to be kind. So sometimes in order for us to learn to do the right thing, we have to be allowed to do the wrong thing. You gave the example of putting the hand in the fan. Yeah. You gave the example Prabhupada, then FUD, then all of a sudden. Yeah. So, yeah, and the Lord's fulfilling all of our desires, even if they're not all completely spiritual. But the overriding experience within this world is one of alternating suffering and happiness. And happiness is not really spiritual happiness. So the experience of Adi Bautic and Adi David and Adiatmic miseries within this material world brings one to question, the existential existence here. And then if they meet devotees, then they will agree to, according to ability, to follow Shiksha, to follow what Krishna is saying and to do the right thing, having been burned from doing the wrong thing. Do you understand? Did that help, Mabula Bangalataka? So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Thank you.
I was
Just
thinking,
like I had this experience when I was young as well. I've said this before, but I say it again. I mean, one time I used to have this fascination with grown-ups who used to smoke, So I would go to pick up the cigarette and also smoke. I think I was 5 or 6 years. I forget how old I was. We're very young. Too young to smoke anyway. And my mother would chastise me. She would smack my hand and tell me, no, 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 this is not for you. But I was still, whenever I didn't learn my lesson. So one time we was walking on the street and there was this cigar on the pavement, which was still burning. And of course I did what I always did. I went to pick it up and copy the grown-ups. And she said, go on then. I stopped. I thought, wow, she's letting me do it. Then I picked it up and she said, suck hard. And I did. And I didn't nearly die, but I had tears come from my eyes. It was disgusting. I was sick and everything, And she was smiling. There you go. Now do you understand? So in the same way, the Lord has to let us run around this material world so that we again choose to do the right thing. Yeah. Sorry, I cut someone off there.
it's all right. I was just saying that in Bhagavad Gita, Bhagavad Gita is all about this, isn't it? That Krishna is telling Arjuna, guiding him through the whole philosophy, everything, and then sits back and says, right, now it's up to you. You decide what you want to do.
Yeah,
So
that's interesting point as well.
He's giving us everything. And if what we choose to do, that is our decision.
Yeah. But Krishna does, very good point. Good point that comes up at towards the end of the Bhagavad Gita. Now you do what you wish to do. Yeah. So, but Krishna does tell us, he will tell us the consequences of not following his shiksha. He says also later on in Bhagavad that nevertheless, you will be lost, Arjuna. If you do not follow my instructions, you'll be lost. So Krishna does tell us the results, but sometimes we have to learn the hard way. We can't learn by hearing. We have to learn by experience, as I gave that example of myself. Yes.
Prabhu, I
Please,
wanted to share one more reflection, which is Krishna is also a non-dualistic personality. So he does not see good or bad in anything. He is free from dualities. So, am I audible?
Yes, you are.
Yeah. So, because he is free from dualities, he does not see good or bad or whatever. And he lets everyone exercise their own free will. And there is material nature to take care of whatever karmas that get built up because of the actions taken by the living entities. So because he is free from duality, dualities, and he does not interfere with anyone's free will. Definitely, the circumstances are based on his karmas, whatever circumstances he gets, but actions that he has to take in those circumstances, he's completely free to decide what he wants to
Yeah, I think you're bringing up the aspect of the Lord's being transcendent and being aloof from the details of the material energy, although he does give guidance to mankind how to act in a dharmic way, and he comes to establish that. So he does, in one sense, he does have a concern for the jivas, and he does want them to act according to for their well-being and act according to dharma. So that's why he come. Yes, sastravadim ushutta. And one who doesn't follow dharma, there is consequences of that. So the Lord comes and he sends his representatives also to teach. So yes, you're right. The Lord is not directly involved, but he's not aloof to the point that he doesn't give us an opportunity. Yeah, he comes, and he came as Vyasadeva, yeah, to give us the Vedic scriptures, and he comes as a spiritual master to also guide us. So that's there as well. Yeah.
Can you tell that story about that man who was on a boat and he was going to die, and he says, "Oh, I'll wait till the Lord comes." The Lord sends different people in different ways, and he's not.
Oh yeah. Sometimes we may not recognize the Lord's helping hand.
That's it. Yeah.
Yeah, if I get the story right, I think it's a Christian story actually. There's this great flood, and a man that took shelter on the top of his house, and he was ardent believer in God, and he was convinced because of his devotions, the Lord is going to save him. So he's at the top of his house, and the level of and the water level is getting higher and higher. So it gets to the point where he actually drowns. So the story goes, as I say in this type of story. No, actually, no, let me backtrack. Let me backtrack. As the water is getting to its highest point on the top of a house, then a boat comes. And obviously endeavor to put him on the boat, but he says, "No, my Lord will be my savior. The Lord will be my savior." Of course, then I guess it's a story, so they probably, what they would have done in reality would have probably just knocked him out and put him in the boat. But the boat left us. Then he dies. Then he complains to the Lord, "Why did you forsake me? Why didn't you come and rescue me?" So then what does the Lord say? Anyone know what the concluding part of this is? Krishna or the Lord said. Anyone know the end?
Yeah, the Lord said that I did send a boat first. You refused to climb in it. Then I sent a helicopter.
Oh, really?
You refused to go in it. So I sent 2 or 3 stays, and you didn't you accept any of it. That is why you have come here now.
Yeah, thank you. I forgot about the helicopter. Yeah, so in that regard, Dhananjay, we're just replying to the first part of your comment, just that the Lord is aloof and he doesn't, he doesn't get involved. He's free of duality. In one sense, yes, but in another sense, he knows that we need to be guided. Souls need to be guided in to do the right things. So then he will, to that sense, he gets involved by sending his representatives, to guide mankind. Yeah. All right.
Yes, Prabhu.
Yeah. Anything else on here? Otherwise, we can have a little look at text 15. There's a comment here. Let me just go through this. The living entity within the body does nothing. Krishna, in the Sanskrit of this verse, let's go to that. He says, na 3 times. Na ka kritvam na kamani, na kama. Yeah. So the conditioned soul does not create activities, nor does he induce people to act. It's more or less saying the same thing. Nor does he control the fruits of even his own activities. Yeah? Krishna encourages Arjuna not to be attached to the fruits of his actions. So it's not within our absolute control. We can try to the best of our ability, but the result, the deciding factor on the result of activity is Krishna. Yeah, he controls the fruits of even he does. Nor does he control the fruits of his own activities. All this happens by the modes of material nature. Yeah. So here, continue. Who then controls the modes of material nature? That's the super soul. Often, though, after understanding the omnipotence of the Supreme, people wrongly conclude that the responsibility. So this is leading on to the next verse now. Yeah. People conclude, understanding, as we discussed, the omnipotence of the Lord, as Dhananjaya mentioned as well, is that someone may conclude that the responsibility then for all actions and all reactions falls on Krishna. Because of all reactions and reactions is influenced by the modes of material nature, then who is controlling the modes of material nature? Super Soul, the Supreme Lord. So therefore, he must be responsible for even our sinful activity. Someone could say, isn't it? Why then should I receive any reactions? Because it's the Lord who's caused the whole, who's set the whole, everything in motion, as it says in Bhagavad Gita, text 14. Yeah? Why then should I receive the reactions for what is being caused by Krishna? Then to remove that misconception, Krishna is going to speak the next verse. All right? So that's might be a logical question that comes from this. Okay, so all right, it's all enacted by the modes of material nature, Maya Dakshena Prakriti, and that's conducted ultimately under the sanction of Krishna. So Krishna's to blame. You know, the Lord made me do it, Your Honor. A man in court blames God for inspiring him to do a heinous crime. Okay, let's read text 15 then and see what Krishna says in this regard. Any readers?
Raj Kishore.
Okay, go ahead. I couldn't see your hand there, but go ahead, my Raj Kishore. You have been volunteered to read. You can use your own free will to read, or you can choose not to.
Hare Krishna.
Okay.
Nadatte kasyachit papam na chaiva sukrutam vibhu ajnanena vrutam jnanam tena muhyanti jantava. Nor does the Supreme Lord assume anyone's sinful or pious activities. Embodied beings, however, are bewildered because of the ignorance which covers their real knowledge. Prabhupada. The Sanskrit word Vibhu means the Supreme Lord who is full of unlimited knowledge, riches, strength, fame, beauty, and renunciation. He is always satisfied in himself, undisturbed by sinful or pious activities. He does not create a particular situation for any living entity, but the living entity, bewildered by ignorance, desires to be put into certain conditions of life, and thereby his chain of action and reaction begins. A living entity is, by superior nature, full of knowledge. Nevertheless, he is prone to be influenced by ignorance due to his limited power. The Lord is omnipotent, but the living entity is not. The Lord is Vibhu, or omniscient, but the living entity is Anu, or atomic. Because he is a living soul, he has the capacity to desire by his free will. Such desire is fulfilled only by the omnipotent Lord. And so when the living entity is bewildered in his desires, the Lord allows him to fulfill those desires. But the Lord is never responsible for the actions and reactions of a particular situation which may be desired. Being in the bewildered condition, therefore, the embodied soul identifies himself with a circumstantial material body and becomes subjected to the temporary misery and happiness of life. The Lord is a constant companion of the living entity as Paramatma or super soul, and therefore he can understand the desire of the individual soul, as one can smell the flavor of a flower by being near it. Desire is a subtle form of conditioning for the living entity. The Lord fulfills his desire as he deserves. Man proposes and God disposes. The individual is not therefore omnipotent in fulfilling his desires. The Lord, however, can fulfill all desires, and the Lord, being neutral to everyone, does not interfere in the desires of the minute independent living entities. However, when one desires Krishna, the Lord takes special care and encourages one to desire in such a way that one can attain to him and be eternally happy. The Vedic hymns therefore declare, Esha yuhi eva sadhu karma karyati tam yam ebhyo lokabhya ananishate. Esha yu eva sadhu karma karyanti yam adho ninishate. The Lord engages the living entity in pious activities so that he may be elevated. The Lord engages him in impious activities so that he may go to hell. Kaushaki Upanishad. The living entity is completely dependent on his distress and happiness. By the will of the Supreme, he can go to heaven or to hell, as a cloud is driven by the air. Therefore, the embodied soul, by his immemorial desire to avoid Krishna consciousness, causes his own bewilderment. Consequently, although he is constitutionally eternal, blissful, and cognizant, due to the littleness of his existence, he forgets his constitutional position of service to the Lord and is thus entrapped by nescience. And under the spell of ignorance, the living entity claims that the Lord is responsible for his conditional existence. The Vedanta Sutra also confirmed this. Vaishamya naigranyane nas tape satvat tathahi darshyati. The Lord neither hates nor likes anyone, though he appears to.
Okay. Thank you for reading. Again, reminds us of Dhananjay's point that he made about the Lord's being not partial. Yeah, and that's mentioned here. The Lord neither hates nor likes anyone, as though he appears to. So, any questions or comments here? It's very, that question then has been answered. Someone can just perhaps paraphrase what Krishna is saying here in a few words. I'm waiting. Oh, Chandravali's smiling. She's waiting for someone.
Yes, let other people. I talk too
Yes,
much.
come on. No, it's fine. Just in a few words.
Yes, Labanga, you're good at it. Let's hear you, Labanga.
You've been
Sorry, I've
volunteered.
got to admit that I wasn't paying attention, and
I think it's good I asked the question, put you on the spot. So, but go on.
Yeah.
So,
Isn't
so
it?
you know,
Go on, every time I speak, you speak. So the question was raised at the end of the last purple, is that having understood that, again, having understood that the soul does not induce people to act, everything's enacted by the modes of material nature. Yeah, so therefore, if one acts in a dharmic way, in a wrong way, it's not us to be blamed, it's the free modes of material nature, which is controlled by the law. So therefore, why should we suffer from sinful activities? And this verse answers this question. Yeah.
Isn't it the condition again ignorance?
Sorry?
I'm just asking, isn't it because the conditional souls, as they are in ignorance, they blame God, or they blame the situation, or they blame anybody for the condition they are in?
Yeah, but basically that's why this verse in purple is explaining exactly that, and Prabhupada is elaborating on that. And it could in essence you could say that we have to accept ownership for the wrongs that we might do. Yeah, it's no good pointing to this. That's why I had mentioned at the beginning, before I read this, was someone in court who's down for heinous crime. You say, it was the Lord that made me do it, Your Honor. Yeah. Will the person be set free? Oh, okay. Thank you for informing us of that. You know, actually, there was one hypothetical like play where God was taken to court. They did this whole elaboration on this philosophical misconception. Yeah. Just like young children, if a young child, he does something wrong, and then he says to his parents, well, you're the one who brought this glass dish. You're the one who raised me. You're the one who gave birth to me. And I pulled the glass dish off the table and it smashed. So it's not me, it's you. You're my parents. No, the child himself was mentioned here, out of ignorance. The child chooses to act wrongly. Sometimes children know. There was one friend of mine, Dao Nitai Prabhu, and his son was very young at the time. And he described how at their home they had this, I forget, it was this quite delicate contraption. And again, they would tell their young son to keep away from it because he might break it. So being young, he then decided to think, I wonder what would happen if I did break it. So he did. He pulled it off the table and it smashed into 1,000 pieces. He just became curious of what would happen if he did exactly the opposite of what his father was telling him to do. So that, in one sense, that's like the jiva, you could say. He becomes, in ignorance, he acts wrongly. And then, so therefore, he has to take responsibility. He has to accept responsibility. It is not the Lord who is, it's not Krishna who is held accountable. It's the jiva himself. So therefore, it's the jiva himself who has to go get various different types of karmic reactions for his fruitive activities. Yeah. The Lord, again, he is not, keeps disappearing. The Lord, the Lord neither hates, and here it describes as well, the Lord engages a living entity in pious activities so he may be elevated. The Lord engages him in impious activities so he may go to hell. Yeah. But the engaging in pious activities or impious activities is the responsibility of the living entity. And it's quite amazing, isn't it? Bhagavad Gita, it answers some pretty fundamental questions which is asked in discussions of how God acts in this world. So how here's one nice explanation is being given.
Well, okay, so
on,
when one is acting in an impious way, and you know this is going to take you to hell, meaning multiple births after that into really bad situation, how could you help that person? How could you make them realize it?
Well, let's just go back first. I was just thinking that we discussed in the 3rd chapter that some persons, or we see that even having understood from Sastra or from the sadhus, that to act outside of Vedic principles, then there's going to be a reaction. There's going to be, one's going to become entangled. So then Arjuna asked a question to Krishna, what is it that impels one to act, even if they know the results is going to be bad for them? What is it that forces one to act? And anyone know the answer? Yeah. It is lust only, Arjuna, which is the all-devouring enemy of mankind. So sometimes, because of, you could say, conditioned nature, not, I could say, being weak in spiritual knowledge, then one becomes, is seemingly forced to act in a certain way. So I just wanted to make that point. That comes. So Chandra, your question was again, what to do if we see someone walking towards the edge of, if someone's...
Because on the other hand, you see a person who is going through difficulties, but you can see Krishna's hand in it because they being purified, from their reactions. So then how can one help somebody are really ruining their life? How can one help them,
Well, first things first, it depends on the specific situation, the specific person, but we should always be willing to or want to help people. If we see someone walking towards, if we see a blind man walking towards the edge of a cliff, then we should help. If we see someone who's acting in a way which we understand to be nasty, to be not pleasant, to be, in a mode of ignorance or the mode of passion, we might take them aside. And this is done generally in society, isn't it? We see parents or teachers will want to guide their wayward students. Say wayward students not paying attention to the classes, etc. Then the teacher might pull them aside and tell them of the consequences. Tell them of the consequences. My teachers told me that many times. Tell them the consequences. So that's our role as those who study Bhagavad Gita. And we may meet some people who are quite bewildered in life because of their, doing so many things which they think is going to give happiness, drinking alcohol, having illicit affairs and relationships, stealing and things like that. So if they have an ear, see, this is the thing. If they have an ear and they're willing to listen, then there's a chance that we can help them. If they're not going to give an ear or they're not willing to listen, then there's not much we can do other than pray or smuggle them in some prashadam, as we've mentioned many times. If they show a seed or they show they want to know, then we can explain. Clean up your life, man. Stop doing this. Stop doing that. You're not going to experience happiness overnight, but you have to change your lifestyle in order for you to be free from the suicidal thoughts that you are having, say, and to be free of this depression. You have to make some life changes. And it may mean, in the first beginning, it may mean that at least you should regulate yourself, live in the marriage relationship. Prabhupada would give that instruction to his disciples. Who in the early days to get married, for instance. So that's one aspect, you could say, an answer to the question is that people have to be ready to hear And we should want to guide people, but they should want guidance. Otherwise, it's not much point. Yeah. And then you're mentioning something else as well, where you, it sounds like we heard describe the different reactions of a sinful activity. I think you mentioned where it's actually manifest. Some people are sowing seeds, so you point out, man, you're sowing a bad seed, man. It's going to come back at you. Yeah, universal justice is going to come back at you. But then you may see someone going through specific reactions. Yeah, the fruit is flowered. Yeah. So how do you guide them then? Again, it's similar. Again, if they have an ear, but you guide them towards seeking shelter, to being, in one sense, repentant, to seeking shelter and to enter into prayer through chanting the Maha Mantra, Krishna consciousness. Like that. So if there is anyone else on that?
Basically, stay Krishna conscious. Make sure your chanting and your sadhana is good. Is that what you're trying? That's what you preach.
Yeah, it depends on the person. For some persons, sadhana's out of the question.
Oh yeah.
So therefore, you may be able to encourage them somehow and befriend them, let them win their trust with you. But there's many different situations. But the overall thing is that we should try to help people. We should try to help ourselves to begin with. And then, yeah.
Yes, sometimes it's nice to try and help, but the person doesn't want to help.
Yeah, that's what I was saying. Yeah. So therefore, you'd move on to them. What can you do? It's just like when we endeavor to distribute books on the street, Prabhupada's books on the street. Some persons are determined not to take a book. What can you do? Is go to the next person. Yeah, unfortunately, this is the crazed position of people. They're suffering so much, but because of pride, then they will refuse to accept advice, especially if they hold on to atheistic views. They refuse to take dharmic advice, of how to act in life,
Prabhu, I have a question.
Please.
I'm thinking we are talking about helping devotee people come into Krishna consciousness, but even among ourselves, if we see someone is not okay, or our ego, because of our ego, even someone says something to us, even it is right, we will think, no, what she knows about me, I know better.
Yeah. This is where things get complicated. This is known as false ego. So the less false ego we have, then the more we can accept correction. Yeah. This is what makes things complicated. We invest a false sense of identity, and we think we do not need advice, But then Krishna is so kind. Krishna will make sure that we learn a lesson. And it might come in come in a hard way. Yeah, but good point. Thank you, Nitai Mata. All right. Anything else we can glean from here? So now we know the answer to this question. Yeah. We know why this verse was spoken. Okay, so everything's done by the modes, so therefore the Lord's to blame. No. The Lord doesn't assume anyone's sinful or pious activities. It's embodied beings because of ignorance. Yeah. So they're to take ownership, for their wrongs. Yes, I cut someone off there.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, please.
So I want to ask, like at the page there is mention in that God doesn't like anyone, or God even doesn't hate anyone. but he seems so. So, yeah, so in the page, yeah, Vedanta Sutra is also confirmed this.
Yeah, yeah.
So, could you please elaborate more? Because normally we do the prayers so that like God can can support us, can guide us. So it must be only when the God is liking the person, the only then he must be doing that. So like bit of like if you can elaborate, that would be like more in depth.
Yes, yes. Well, the important point here is that though he appears to. So ultimately, the Lord is as samoham sababhuteshu nadvishu na priya na bhajanti nam bhakta. There's a verse that comes up later in the Bhagavad Gita, which describes that the Lord is actually, he doesn't have any favorites. He doesn't, from one aspect, he is samoham, he is equally disposed to all living entities. But then the example is given that yes, he is equally disposed to all jivas. But in this verse, he says, but those who render service unto me, so service means, and you mentioned one of the angas of devotional service, which is prayer, vandanam. For those who render service to me, then I become, how to end? I become very dear to them, and they become very dear to me. And Prabhupada elaborates a bit more in the purple. He describes that just as a benevolent father has, he's engaging, or he's inclined to his sons, even though he may be a manager, because his sons express love for him, he's inclined to reciprocate with them in a very intimate way. So does that help? So according to, the Lord neither hates nor likes anyone, though he appears to. But for those who render service to him, those who call out to him, then the Lord is inclined. But he's not as if he is being favorable to one and not the other. Meaning that if anyone, even if they're the most sinful of all sinful persons, the most vicious of all vicious persons, if they call out to Krishna and they take up a life of devotion, then they will get mercy from the Lord. That the Lord doesn't take, it's not as if he takes grudges or has for anyone. He's equally disposed to everyone.
Yeah.
Does that help?
Yeah, understood. Yeah, I understood it. Thank you so much. Thank you. Hare Krishna.
Yeah.
Prabhupada, Prabhupada says somewhere like a father who has different natured children. He loves them all. Sorry, you carry on now.
Yeah, no, that's exactly what I was trying to say. I was given that example. I think you can carry on with that, Mother, and I'll just try and find the verse. We've got 5 minutes left.
It's like a father would have quite a few different natured children. Some are naughty, some are really, one of them is really nice, brings him a biscuit, gives, so he shows a little bit affection to him more. But he still loves all of them equally. So to me, Krishna loves everybody. It's not that he doesn't, but when we surrender to him, or we bring him a flower, bring him something, obviously he's going to love you more, a little bit more.
Nicely put. The Lord loves everyone. The Lord loves everyone. So let's just read this verse here. I just read this and we can finish it for today. This is text 29 of chapter 9, okay? 9:29. I envy no one, nor am I partial to anyone. I am equal to all, but whoever renders service unto me in devotion is a friend, is in me, and I am also a friend to him. Purple. We might not get time to read the whole purport. Let's see. One may question here that if Krishna is equal to everyone, no one is his special friend, then why does he take a special interest in the devotees who are always engaged in his transcendental service? But this is not discrimination, it is natural. Any man in this material world may be very charitably disposed, yet he has a special interest in his own children. The law claims that every living entity, in whatever form, is his son. That's what Chandravali Mama just mentioned. So he provides everyone with a generous supply of the necessities of life. He is just like a cloud which pours rain all over, regardless of whether it falls on rock or land or water. But for his devotees, he gives specific attention. Such devotees are mentioned here. They are always in Krishna consciousness, and therefore they are always transcendently situated in Krishna. The very phrase Krishna consciousness suggests that those who are in such consciousness are living transcendentalists situated in him. The Lord here says Mai te, they are in me. Naturally, as a result, the Lord is also in them. This is reciprocal. This also explains the words Yeyatamam papatyante. Whoever surrender unto me, proportionately I take care of him. This transcendental reciprocation exists because both the Lord and the devotee are conscious. When a diamond, this is really nice, this description here. When a diamond is set in the golden ring, it looks very nice. The gold is glorified, and at the same time, the diamond is glorified. The Lord and the living entity eternally glitter. And when a living entity becomes inclined to the service of the Supreme Lord, he looks like gold. The Lord is a diamond, and so this combination is very nice. Living entities in a pure state are called devotees. The Supreme Lord becomes the devotee of his devotees. If a reciprocal relationship is not present between the devotee and the Lord, then there is no personalist philosophy. In the impersonal philosophy, there is no reciprocation between the Supreme Lord and the living entity. But in the personalist philosophy, there is. And can't resist but to read the last paragraph as well. The example is often given that the Lord is like a desire tree, and whatever one wants from the desire tree, the Lord supplies. But here the explanation is more complete. The Lord is here stated to be partial to the devotees. So the question Mother was asking at the end, so what do devotees do? They vandanam. Yeah, in times of difficulty, they pray to the Lord. Yeah. This is a manifestation of the Lord's special mercy to the devotees. The Lord's reciprocation should not be considered to be under the law of karma. It belongs to the transcendental situation in which the Lord and his devotees function. Devotional service to the Lord is not an activity of this material world. It is part of the spiritual world, where eternity, bliss, and knowledge predominate. Jai Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. So that's text chapter 9, text 29, if you want to read more or further again. All right. Okay, thank you. Let's then continue tomorrow with text 16. That's correct, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. So please do join us. We had who's with us today? Payal was with us, Nitai Mata was with us, Manu Mohini was with us, Luchi was with us, Lavanga Latika, Katarina, Mafakaya, Nidhi, Shama, Anupama, Chandravali. Thank you. Hare Krishna. So please join us tomorrow. And you can also, if you've got any questions that come up, you can note them down. You can ask as well. All right. Jai Srila
We can
Prabhupada.
finish off by one thing. To the degree we surrender, to the degree Krishna reciprocates. So
Yeah.
we surrender to Gita, and Krishna will reciprocate with us.
Yeah. We can surrender to Bhagavad Gita tomorrow at 6 o'clock.
Krishna
Okay.
will guide.
Hare Krishna.
Thank you.
Ora
Hare Krishna.
Premanande, Hare Bo, Hare